and thanks for tuning in for another episode of MidAmerican Gardener. I'm your host, Tinisha Spain, and joining me in studio today are two of our panelists who are here to answer your questions and, of course, show you some of their things from their gardens and their homes. But before we get into that, let's have them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about where you can find them in the garden. So, Martie.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Martie Alanya, and I landscape. I probably landscape more than I should, but I do anyway. So I did it for a long time, and then I quit, and then I kind of, everybody has a yard. What am I going to do? So anyway, I kind of specialize in the urban garden, the small garden. So people have, tight spaces, and they're ugly, and they're just tired of looking out the window at that. So they call me.
And they call you.
They
trees
call me.
And shrubs and
That's
all
what
that
they
good
do.
stuff.
Perennials, I'm not a big fan of annuals because, they're annuals. They're quitters.
Spoken like a true landscaper.
Thank you.
Ella?
I'm Ella Maxwell. I'm a horticulturist and master gardener as well, and I do have a large yard. So even though I'm in an urban area, I have some large plant collections, and I like trees, shrubs, perennials. And I don't plant a lot of annuals either, but I do see their benefits.
Yeah.
They do. I mean, tomatoes. Come on. The vegetable garden is full of annuals.
That's true.
Except for the asparagus, God bless it. But anyway.
Which mine's all dead, but that's another show.
Mine's not. Mine's not. Okay.
It's not? Whatever.
Okay.
Anyway, as always, we're going to start with some show and tells. And the ladies, as you can see, brought lots of stuff to talk about today. So, Martie, you've got a theme.
Yes, I do.
And it's right on time, too, because It's been...
Get dry as a popcorn fart.
We met somebody somewhere, and they said, the first time I heard Martie say drier than a popcorn fart, it was like a life-changing moment for them. So you just made someone's day, and I can't remember where we were, but there you are. That's for you.
It's a word picture. You're welcome. I grew up
because that's all I feel like I'm doing is watering.
Oh,
It has been hot and dry. Although we in central Illinois have gotten rains in the nick of time.
Yes.
I mean, you're still watering, but then we just got about an inch and a couple tenths.
Oh, the corn looks so much happier.
Yes.
It's not all spiky
Right.
and miserable.
I'm glad for the farmers.
Yeah.
Yes. So.
Well, here a while back, it was a heat index like 104, and I saw a lot of damage from people watering improperly. So, okay, you're familiar with probably all of these things. Okay, this is the guy right here. Now you've seen them before. They got a little jet stream, and then you can make it jettier or not jettier, and it goes, or it goes. Okay, these are useless for the garden, really. Don't do that. Use those for I don't even think the lawnmower likes getting washed with this, but it never said anything. So, okay, save this for
the car
inanimate
wash.
Objects, the driveway, the garage floor, whatever you're doing. These are not useful for plants. They're either too soft or too hard. It's not good for the plants. Remember, they are alive and they're tender. These are better. They've got adjustable. I'm sure you've seen these if you live in America. So the thing adjusts around, and you can have a spray or a mist or a flat surface or on and on.
Shower is usually my go-to.
Yep, garden or shower. Sometimes they're called different things. But yeah, just a gentle, like you're pouring out a watering can, and you hit this and it goes, that's just darling. Okay, that's what they need. Don't water in the middle of the day. I don't know if anybody walked out and brushed up against a shrub or a tree a couple weeks ago when the heat index was 104, but they were actually hot. I mean, they were really hot. And if you go out at 2:30 in the afternoon, like, oh, you're wilting, I'll give you a drink, and you squirt them. Essentially what you get is you're steaming them like a vegetable in a microwave. Okay, the leaf is so hot, and the cold water hits it, and it just goes, and then you get that brown spot, and you're like, I was mad, I was trying to help you. Okay, don't do that. Water later in the day when the air is getting cooler all the time, if you're going to water overhead and get the foliage wet. If you're not going to water from overhead and get the foliage wet, you can probably water any time of the day at all. But if you're going to do this, like with this, like walking around, doing your, yeah, and these also come with adjustable heads on a long aluminum wand, okay? And if the long wand you get is a cheapy Charlie, it doesn't have a shutoff. if it doesn't have a shutoff, buy an inline shutoff, because that's how you keep from drowning when you're watering stuff over your head, like annuals in pots, which I never do. So anyway, so back to this. Okay, when you're watering over the foliage, and it's nice, you know, in the evening you can get out there and you can just cool everybody off and let the drip run off at the same time. I'm assuming that all you good gardeners are mulching. You have to mulch, and then as the water drips off and cools the leaves, then it drips down through the mulch and it feeds the roots too. If you see something that's really, really suffering in the heat and you need to water it, take this off of your hose. Take it off, okay? Lay it over there where you can find it later. That's not what I do, but you should. And then you take this little dude and you've got the end of this hose, right? So you just have the end of your hose. You lay it down. Here, hold that. There you go. Now right over here. Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
I'm the plant.
Yeah, you're the plant.
Okay.
Lay this right down by the very stem of the plant. And then turn the water on so you have a trickle the size of a pencil and no larger. Okay? And then go do something else. Go fold socks or watch Gilligan's Island or something for half an hour. Okay? And then come
You just
back.
dated yourself.
Yeah, shut up.
I'm just saying. Gilligan?
More hay trigger? No, thanks, Roy. I'm stuffed. Okay? So anyway, there.
This is not a comedy
So-
show. We are educating
so
people.
We are. So this way, you don't get any on the leaves, you don't burn the leaves, but you get all the moisture right at the roots, where obviously it's going to benefit the tops. But don't water when it's too hot from overhead. Don't do that.
Okay.
And also a vegetable garden. You can use these. I really like these kind of sprinklers. They oscillate. You know, they don't puddle, and you can set them this high or 8 feet in the air. You can adjust them easily with your water pressure, so you can get just exactly the right space that you want and the right amount of water where you need to have it. You just have to fart around with it a little bit.
Now, let me ask you this. What are your thoughts on evening watering? I've heard yay and I've heard nay.
Evening watering is probably not good for grass because it's prone to fungus growth that's in the soil. And I don't like to do evening watering. What do you think? I don't like to do evening watering on vegetable gardens because, again, most vegetables are annuals. They're susceptible to all kinds of stuff, and they only live one season. So encouraging things to kill them is a little bit counterproductive, but you do what you want.
Well, some people only have evening watering. It's very difficult for them to get up early in their routines and such. And so, you know, I think the most important thing with watering is be smart about it, because you want to be water wise and not waste water kind of thing. And so I think some of the drip products that are out there, the soaker hoses,
those can be really helpful,
even timers, some people can set watering timers. I think the biggest problem is in this heat is overwatering. And so we showed how we watered the small plant. The important thing is the plant should recover. If the plant is not recovered that next morning, there's something else going on. And overwatering and underwatering have similar symptoms.
They do.
So
Good point.
you don't want to water a little bit every day.
No.
That's why using like the oscillating sprinkler that she has, and maybe putting out a small container. When you do water, you want to water at least maybe ½ an inch so that it's going to percolate down through the soil.
Yeah, we're talking about like an hour or an hour and a half.
Right.
Don't put it out there
But,
for 20 minutes and
again,
go, oh, you're fine. That's
in
not
the
enough.
evening, there are some plants that will suffer with mildew issues or other kinds of disease problems, and your idea of watering near the base rather than watering
Over
the foliage is right on there.
I was thinking about this too on the way in here. When you have, you know, if you don't have a long aluminum waterer with a rose on it like this, get one. And like, again, with a shutoff.
Makes life easier.
You can spend time in your garden. I mulch my garden with straw, and I don't shake it up. I don't shake up the sections. We call them flakes of straw. I just lay them like this. There's one. There's another plant. I lay them with a crease between them. It holds the moisture better. It breaks down on the bottom. But you can just walk along in your garden and go with a long wand. You don't even have to bend over because I'm all about lazy, okay? So, you know, count to 25, move on to the next tomato plant, count to 25, then come back down the same row, do it again, and then go the next row. You know, and you can contemplate the universe while you're out there.
While you're out there, there you go.
No foliage wet in the evening.
Okay. All right.
All right. Well,
Ella,
I
we're gonna
guess
go to
I'll
you.
talk a little bit about watering because I have a rather sad orchid here.
I've killed so many, so many.
This is a Phalaenopsis orchid, and it is truly an epiphyte. That means that it has these roots here that are aerial, and this is where it gets its nutrients and water from the air. And they can be potted in a bark mix or different things like that, but these really do well outside in the summer in a shaded location. And so that's where I'm going to put this. The problem that I've had is I've kept them with some of my other houseplants down in the basement, and it's too cool and it's too dark, and they've struggled. But if you have one that is doing poorly, here's a trick that you can do. You can take a bowl and some iced tea, or you can make, you know, brew some tea, but it's actually the tannins in the tea. And what you do is you soak the entire plant for about 24 hours, then you take it out, set it on a towel or something, and you let it dry. And so over a course of a week, you soak it in the water, you let it dry out, you soak it in the water. And so these do have small cells on the bottom that can absorb water, and so it'll bring the turgidity of your plant back. Then you can repot it, and that's what I'm going to do, and put it outside, and hopefully my Phalaenopsis will recover because I have killed quite a number of them too.
And I adore them, and I just can't, you know, I got them in a place I think it's perfect, bright indirect light, kind of high, it's on the piano, they get daylight all day long. No, they just
didn't like it.
Try different locations in your house if you have struggled, and there's no reason not to continue to buy them and enjoy them. The flowers last for weeks, months, and then hopefully you can keep them going or give them to someone who is more successful.
Okay. All right. Let's do a couple questions before we go back into show and tell. This one's going to be from Trish Gale. This is an email question. She says, I live in the rural area outside of Monticello on 7 acres, which includes 4 acres of dense timber and at least 12 perennial flower gardens. That is a lot of work. You go, girl. Ooh. In the last few years, I've noticed an invasive weed shown in the pictures attached, and we do have those. I don't know what it is. It pops up in the gardens, and it grows rampant, climbing up trees and attaching itself with runners. It's bright lime green in color. The ladies are nodding because they already know what this is. And I'll just kind of briefly summarize. I never noticed this weed until about 4 or 5 years ago. Any suggestions to get rid of this pesky nuisance? So first, let's identify it.
The first thing that you neglected to read is she tried pulling it out, and it has spines on the stem. And that is one of the ways to identify this plant. It's called green briar for that reason, because of these spines, and that it's not something that you could bare hand pull out of the ground.
What are your suggestions to get rid of it?
Well, the thing about it is it does have some underground rhizomes, I believe, and so that's why she's finding this, like mother plant, having things come up very much like hops. I would say that it would be similar to that, at least in my garden. But what it does do is it makes a fruit, and it is not invasive in the literature, but it can be problematic because it does have fruit, and those are going to then be deposited around with the birds feeding and such, and so you can have these seedlings pop up as well. But I've found that they do dig out pretty easily.
They're also shade tolerant, which is really terrible too. But
Right.
yeah, you can remove them.
And when you look in the literature, a lot of times they're recommending herbicides, especially some of the glyphosate Roundup products, where you're just going to treat maybe the cut stem or something. But I have really found that it hasn't been that much of a problem that I couldn't dig it out.
I had it growing through a fence from a wooded area that didn't belong to me.
Okay, so it's creeping from the neighbors.
Yeah, and I put leather gloves on and then a towel and tried to.
So combination of
I had to
pulling
drag it
and
out. Yeah, well, I couldn't go over there.
Yeah,
and
that's
dig it
true.
Well,
up.
That's true.
and
So I was
again,
like, okay.
that shovel that I think I showed, my root slayer, that's, I mean, that's pretty easy. And this is maybe a two-person dig where you've got someone kind of pulling on it and the other person, you know, popping the shovel so that you know that you've got the whole plant.
Yeah.
It's not seriously deeply rooted or anything, but it is important to correctly identify it and then decide how you want to control it. And there are herbicides that, you know, non-selective like spot treatment things.
Okay.
But I would recommend hand digging. And she has lots going on though with 7 acres.
My word.
7 acres and 12 flower
12
gardens.
flower
Wow,
gardens.
that's a lot.
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
a
it
lot.
is.
So good luck with that.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got another one from James. This is an email question. His hostas are taking a beating. This email says, this heat has gotten to my hostas. They are in a marginal spot, but have done just fine in previous years. I'll probably move them for next year, but in the meantime, I've ordered a shade screen. My question is, can I cut off the worst of the burnt leaves to make them a bit better looking?
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
Take them off.
take them off.
Yeah, even the hostas in shade, because of this, the drought stress that they were having, have these marginal, which means along the edges, scorching. And right now, that's all just very brittle, and he could
it's real papery,
actually,
crispy.
yeah, just break it off or cut those leaves off because hostas will continue to make leaves throughout the summer.
Yeah, what I would do is, if I'm going to have to do this to some also, I just and of course it's the biggest leaves that look so nice because they're the oldest. Just cut it off as close to the plant as you can. Just sharp knife or a pair of sharp pruners, and it'll grow back. Yeah, it grows like lettuce. You know, it grows from the heart out.
And while we're talking about watering, what would you do to sort of revive a heat-stressed hosta? Your base water that you were talking about here, what are some tips to?
Hosta are in the shade, so even if they get morning sun, once the sun is off the foliage, you can set up a sprinkler or you can water them by hand, but they like moisture, they like a damp, cool area, and so I'm just gonna go out on a limb and assume they're mulched, and then just set up a little sprinkler on them for 2 hours.
Right. Well, the big thing to understand with
moisturize everything.
the hosta and some of the rain patterns that we've had is that they are growing in the shade of trees, and shade trees win.
Yeah.
Especially if they're maples with a shallow root system. So again, some of the rain that we have maybe has not percolated down to them, and so even though they're in the shade, they're supposed to be shade tolerant and everything, they are not drought tolerant. And I found that under trees, digging, you know, there is some of the driest parts of my gardens.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of thing. So yeah, your idea of putting up a sprinkler, a good one.
Okay.
In the shade, when they're in the shade. So
Well,
you don't scorch the leaves again.
Yeah, seeing leaves and seeing different kinds of leaves. Here, well, these are now just lacy leaves. This is a porcelain berry vine. It has, this one is variegated, so the variegated leaf is quite attractive, and it's quite attractive to Japanese beetles, and Central Illinois now has plenty of Japanese beetles feeding now. You're going to find them on some of your favorites. They do like this porcelain berry vine as well as grapevines, so they can be a problem for vineyards and such. They also like dark foliaged, so they can be on dark foliage cannas that you have. Sand cherries, right. Linden trees. So be scouting for these. Now, I, again, am not a proponent of insecticides or pesticides unless they're absolutely warranted. And I just use a little soapy water. So I've got a water. The response on the beetle when they're feeding is I come up underneath the leaf that they're feeding and I just tap the top of the leaf. So we've got the leaf over here.
Here, let me hold your water.
That's it, since you were the plant.
You be the plant on your fingers there.
But anyway, you tap it here and they'll just drop because they drop and then they fly off.
They don't hang on
and
good.
They just fall into this water and drowned. So this is a good way to go out and, I mean, you can't catch them all. And if you really do have some large, some significant areas, I suppose that you could spray. Or the other thing I found is some of the lightweight remade landscape fabrics. I have actually covered plants with that. And if they're on your roses, sacrifice those rose blooms because it's going to take about maybe 4 to 6 weeks for the next flush, and by then the beetles will have moved on. But they know a good thing. They release these pheromones that say, eat at Joe's right here. It's the best. And so they will, if you can control that first wave of beetles, you probably won't have successive feedings.
Okay.
So good luck with that.
Good to know. All right, let's take a Facebook question. This is from Carol. Do black-eyed Susan need to be divided, and if so, when? I have some that are in the midst of lilies, and she says I'm just a non-fancy gardener in Springfield. Me too. And then there's another question that I'm going to pair with this, but let's start here. Do black-eyed Susan need to be divided?
Not that I know of, not generally.
Okay.
I mean, you feel free to share them, and I usually, a clump that's happy where it is will keep getting wider. So just take them off the edge where they're growing into something else.
Okay.
And move them, like cut them off 3 or 4 inches tall. You can move them now if you want. It's not optimal. It's better when the weather is cooler or in the spring, but you can do them anytime.
But you don't have to.
No,
it's not something you need to get in there and
Canada, for heaven's sakes. I mean, they'll recover. Just water them real well.
If she's worried about them mixing in with the lilies, that shouldn't be a problem, but she could actually just weed them out of there and, not even save them.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The one that I was talking about
that water really well, you can get them with the roots too, cut them off, put them somewhere else.
And just transplant them.
Or,
you got options.
Just don't look.
Marilyn in Normal says, I have purple coneflowers and black-eyed Susans that grow to enormous heights. I'm wondering if I prune them down in early July, will they bloom afterwards? So what are your thoughts on that? Pruning the coneflowers and black-eyed Susans.
Well, we thought that in early July they would be blooming right now. And so what we're saying is, yes, after that first flush of blooms, cut them back.
You can deadhead them.
Deadhead them, or maybe cut them down by half, and then they will send up side shoots and bloom again. But if she cuts them, and right now most everything has potential flower buds on them, it's going to be a long time. Enjoy those first blooms. If she wanted to prune, that should have been back in early May, where
even a couple weeks ago in mid-June, before you start seeing flower buds develop. Also, I have to assume that you have the Rudbeckia hirta, the kind of fuzzy lead ones, because they can get pretty tall. I'm curious as to what kind of coneflowers you have that get to enormous heights and you feel like you got to prune them back, because I'm thinking, who does that? I mean, I don't know. I've seen them this tall, but that's about it. Maybe 3.5 feet.
Or she can maybe transplant them into an area of the garden where the height isn't going to be problematic.
Put them in the back.
Right, and there's lots of new dwarf varieties. I think that's what the garden centers are always offering, is more compact, more flowers, smaller plant.
Sure.
Let's go for it.
Gotcha.
But a lot of perennials, you do kind of want to do that too. I planted some Boltonia years ago for a client, and it's not called snowbank for nothing, but it would just overlay everything. So about the 15th of June, I go back and cut it. I mean, by the 15th of June, it was almost 3 feet tall, and it would keep going and bloom at 5 feet tall. So about the middle of June, I just go by and I just hack it off mercilessly. Like, 9,
Yeah.
12 inches tall, and then by fall, when it would bloom, which is when it blooms anyway, it would be manageable.
Yes.
And it
Yes,
would just be
I
eating
think-
small children on the way by. It was crazy. I mean, it would go over asters. It would just drown everything. Like, really? Okay.
Yeah. I've done that too. And there's many good books out there about how to prune perennials and such, and you can experiment, cut some of it
Yeah, we were
back,
talking about that too. Yep.
but not all of it, and then see what happens.
Okay. All right. That's pretty much it. We're out of time, ladies.
Learn while you earn.
Learn while you earn. I like that. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for bringing all the goodies and sharing your knowledge with
She
us.
brought jelly.
Oh yeah, quickly. Can you talk? Can we get that in
Can
about
we?
30 seconds? What's in there?
30 seconds. This is service berry jelly. This is, I was going to talk a little bit about foraging. This is a tree that blooms white in the spring, a service berry, and it has an edible fruit that's really attractive to the birds, but it tastes kind of like blueberries. So my friend Karen and I, because we're a team, we actually picked some berries up at an office building, and be sure you get permission because one of the people in the building came out and said, "What are you doing?" But
stealing.
anyway,
That's what we're doing.
we,
All right. We're out of time.
we cooked it up, and you just put it in a water bath, and you make jelly.
Perfect.
We'll have to taste it. All right. Thanks, ladies. Thanks to you for watching, and we will see you next time. Good night.